The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around a subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter. Welcome to episode 69 of The Things We All Carry. Maya Angelou wrote in Letter to My Daughter, "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." No person sums this up better than Kathy Crosby-Bell. In 2014, Kathy experienced a tragedy that no mother should be exposed to. Her son, Michael Kennedy, was killed in the line of duty. Michael, a Boston firefighter, was riding Engine 33 on March 26, 2014. He and Lieutenant Ed Walsh were first due to a wind-driven fire in the Back Bay area of Boston. That fire claimed both of their lives. Kathy, as a mother, had every right to fall apart and have anger at the world. In place of that, Kathy made it her goal to fight for the life safety of every firefighter. She founded the Last Call Foundation in Michael's memory. Michael and Lieutenant Walsh died in part due to a failed fire hose. They never got the water they called for multiple times. Last Call started there. Why isn't there a burn-proof hose for firefighters? That mission has now morphed into a battle with special interests and the NFPA. Kathy and Last Call have also expanded their interest into cancer detection, fighting PFAS, helping firefighters seek help for PTSD, and offering grants for research in the realm of the fire service. Because Kathy refused to be reduced by the tragedy of Michael's death, the entire fire service has and will benefit from her fight. I'm honored Kathy chose to share her story with me. She is a true inspiration and a testament to what we as humans can do when we harness our power and our tenacity. A quick reminder to please help us build a community which not only recognizes but supports each other through the struggles and recovery. Reach out through Instagram at The Things We All Carry or email mystory@thethingsweallcarry.com to offer support and share your story. Please remember to leave a review on iTunes and give a shout out to any first responder you know, love, or care about. Y'all enjoy the show. Today I have Kathy, and she is part of Last Call Foundation. I'm going to ask her to just give a brief synopsis of where she grew up, what family life was like, and how she kind of got where she is today, and then we'll get into the real story of it all. So good morning, Kathy. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you, Stack.
So where'd you grow up?
Actually, I'm Canadian. I was born in Montreal, Canada. And I came to the U.S. because my older sister needed to have heart surgery at Boston Children's Hospital. My dad and his family were from the greater Boston area, so we came back to Boston for that. We ended up staying. I grew up in a family of 8 in greater Boston and Irish Catholic environment, obviously. My dad died when I was quite young, so I was raised by a single mom. And that kind of taught me that girls can do anything.
Yeah, single moms teach you the word tenacity, don't they?
They do. They really do. You grow up very fast when you're at the older end of a large family with a single mom. So I met Michael's dad when I was 15, and we married when I was 21. Michael was born when I was 23, and we separated before Michael was a year old.
Okay.
So it was not a successful marriage. We got Michael out. I opened a real estate business and operated that while Michael was small. That's how I supported him. And I met my second husband when Michael was 6. He got married. Now, my second husband, Rick D'Elia, had a son the same age as Michael. They were 3 months young. And they grew up together. Michael was this Irish-looking kid with freckles and pale white skin, and Matthew was Italian-looking, French for me, and much taller than Michael at the time. They used to tell people they were twins, Mick and Guido. It was fun. It was fun watching the two of them. My husband died when the boys were 12. And my I guess I feel almost as if Matthew's mother was more like a sister-in-law to me at that point. We became friends and we raised boys together. Michael was a difficult teenager, always into trouble. Got expelled from so many schools. He was in the girls' dormitory at a private school in middle school. In the middle of the night on a Saturday night. So they basically said to me, yeah, you're really going to need to watch this boy. And he was extremely bright, always bored in school. For instance, he had more than enough points to graduate from high school. In Michael's mind, that meant he didn't have to attend his senior year, so he went sporadically. Of course, he didn't realize there was an appendix requirement, so he ended up repeating his senior year because I'm not going to allow you to go through life without your high school diploma. Sorry, pal. So he did that, and he then went to Johnson West in Rhode Island. Then 9/11 happened, and actually, Michael had joined the Marines prior to 9/11, and it was a delayed start. So 9/11 happened when he was in boot camp, and he worked with principal and didn't actually know about it. He didn't know them. His 21st birthday, October 11th, a month after 9/11, and I'll never forget. We were down there celebrating, and the room was full of young Marines and who had all graduated. And I had a birthday cake, Michael. They were going to bring it out. He stood up to go speak with a friend, and I said, "Michael, sit down." This first time he said, "Yes, ma'am," and stuff.
So some learning had occurred in the Marine Corps.
Right. The Marine Corps was very good to me. It was great.
So what does he do from the Marine Corps? Does he go overseas?
Yes, he was in Iraq. He was in 1st Intel Division. He was in the Marines for 7 years. And when he was released, he basically said to me, I'm going to be Boston firefighter. And I said, okay, do they know that? So he went and took the exam and decided that was the only thing he wanted to do. I have no idea where it came from, although he always loved big trucks when he was little. He was actually more interested in garbage trucks than fire trucks when he was little. So he became a big brother here in the greater Boston area. A young boy who was at the time 7 years old, being raised by a single mom. And he began volunteering and motivating his friends to volunteer for various things. And it was really purpose work. He was engaged in pretty much everything. Now, the day he had his interview with the fire department was the day of a major fire here in Boston, in West Roxbury. There was the fire in a Chinese restaurant. It was actually a Chinese restaurant I had gone to after my prom. And 2 firefighters were killed in that fire. So I that day praying that he wasn't going to get on. Of course he did. That brought home to me just how dangerous the job was.
And what year did he join the department then?
I believe it was 2007.
Okay. And that was 2007, and you said, I want to go back to the big brother part because I know that was a big part of his life during that time, correct? Pardon me while I drink some coffee. My throat is really bothering me today, so I apologize.
Yep.
It probably should drink something other than coffee, but that's what's hot and available right now.
That's all right. I have my A&W.
There you go. So, how does that relationship develop in the big brother situation? I know that lasts for 7 years or so.
Well, yes, it lasted right through to his death, and it has continued. Alex is like almost like a nephew to me, and his mom and I see one another probably 2-3 times a month. And she has a younger child now, was born after Michael died, and he has fallen in love with our puppy, our dog. He's no longer a puppy. And so we dog share. He watches our dog when we go away.
Nice.
So the relationship is alive and well. Alex just took the exam for the police here in Massachusetts. So he's get on police.
So what drove Michael to do the Big Brother program?
Well, Michael used to ask me for a baby when he was little. His younger siblings, and he wanted one. And then Matthew came along, and they bonded well. They still wanted more siblings, and Rick died, and so that didn't happen. And so when Michael came home, he was like, I think I could really help. He said, yeah, I was in so much trouble when I was a kid, and I managed to stay out jailed, which essentially, that was his bar. I managed to stay out of jail. When joining the Marines, I had to go and sign something, and I think it was because he was an only child. And that was when I found out he had been arrested with a case of beer when he was 16. And my current husband, Bill Bell, had gotten him out of trouble without ever telling me about it.
So yeah, those skeletons come out when you start applying to jobs and trying to get into the military or trying to get a clearance and questions are asked. Those skeletons do pop out. Those are funny. Yeah. I know that one time we were talking to my mom, and one time my older sister said something about a vase she broke to my mom, and my mom said, "Well, I blamed that on Brendan," and I said, "I didn't break anything. When did I get?" And apparently, I had been punished and it was 35 years later the truth comes out. So it's funny how that happens.
It is truly. I found out a lot about Michael and Matthew in the stories that Matthew told after Michael died.
Yes.
So I was really ignorant of the fact that Matthew was often the one who started the whatever the issue may have been, and Michael always got blamed for it because Michael was the one that was outgoing and he took the blame for everything. Just did it.
So how does his fire department career go? Does he take to it right away, or is it something that he warms up to, or how does it go for him?
So he was assigned to a station in East Boston, which for Boston is one of the newer stations. The only thing he didn't like about it was having to go through the tunnel every day to work. And that was it. Other than that, he loved it. The streets are extremely narrow, and he drove ladder truck. And it was shocking to me when I went over to visit the station, and I'm a surprise. He extended the ladder to show the boys, there was an exercise they were doing, and he climbed to the top of the ladder. I thought I was going to have a stroke. It was terrible. He called me one day, and he was all excited. I think it was after he had just finished his pro-B period. And it was a fire in a 3-story building, and he had been there during the overhaul, and he was explaining to me all of it. And I just I could not believe what he was doing. So I basically said, Michael, you know, things you don't want to be telling your mother, anybody else, but probably not your mother. Um, but he swore like a trooper, which was a problem for me, but most people accepted it as part of who he was. Um, I was always correcting him. His nickname was Dork. And that was like the very antithesis of who he was. And he had picked it up as a challenge because many years ago, there was a television show with a young man who was had Down syndrome. And in one program that we watched, he had been bullied and called a dork. And so Michael and Matthew became Corky, Michael became Dorky, and it more over the years. And Michael was actually introduced to his girlfriend's parents as Dork. The only person in the world who never called him Dork was me. Now I wear the T-shirt that says Dork Strong on it. So it's silly. But when he joined the Marines, actually, that pail wasn't thin. He wrote Dork in sunblock on his back across his shoulders and put it in there. And he dealt with that in the Marines. So
Hey, he owned it, right? He owned it.
yes, he did. He had been transferred to a firehouse that is downtown Boston. It's listed as the firehouse in Boston. It's for this building, but my God, what a mess. He loved that firehouse. It's the busiest firehouse, I believe, at the time. Anyway, it was the busiest firehouse in Boston. It's the one at 100 and on Boylston Street when you're running the Boston Marathon. He was actually present at the marathon bombing. He was working that day. So I believe that bombing traumatized him. I mean, it's one thing to have things going off and, God knows what he went through in Haditha, but when it happens on the street of Boston, that's a whole different matter. Sarah and I were convinced that he had PTSD from that. I think a lot of the firefighters that day in Boston have to be military to get warm to the fire department. I think a lot of them were traumatized.
What changes did you see in him after that kind of pointed that direction for you?
He withdrew. He wasn't his, outgoing, happy self. I could see he was struggling to continue in. For instance, he worked for the Burn Foundation, and he was run the kids. And I could see he was struggling to make himself keep his commitments. I think he was drinking too much, but that's mother's opinion, and I don't drink at all. He was just not happy, and Sarah and I, his girlfriend, talked about it, and then she tried to speak to him about it, and he basically came to me and said, Mom, I want you to always take care of Sarah, but I think we're done. This was a girl he was wildly in love with. And I was, what? Why? How could that be? And Sarah basically said she had told him therapy or it's going to come to an end.
Right.
And so it ended. He began dating another girl. And on paper, she looked good, but in reality, it wasn't going the way he expected. We were kind of worried about boiled rabbits at one point. It was really It was, oh my Lord.
That is not a reference you want to hear when you're speaking about someone's girlfriend.
But fortunately, in it was December, Complex knew Sarah and felt like he had lost his best friend. So I just waited to see what would happen, and Sarah and I had remained friends. And then in January, he reached out to her, and by February, he was asking me if he thought, what he thought Sarah would do if he proposed on Lilac Sunday. Lilacs were her favorite flower. And in Boston, there's this, at the Arnold Arboretum, there's this big Lilac Sunday event. It happened to fall that year on Mother's Day. And you better stop seeing other girls. You better, she's not stupid. She knows what's up. And he was extremely handsome, and girls would just show up around Michael. It was incredible. How that happens for guys, I don't know. It doesn't happen for too many women, but Michael had that magic.
I was going to say, I think there's a lot of guys sitting around going, well, I don't know how it happens for anybody. So don't worry about that.
It happened for Michael.
Yeah. So that fire station, explain where it is in relation, because if people don't know the city, it is in a very clustered spot in the city. And it's very close to Fenway, correct?
Yes. You can actually, when we go to Fenway, we park at the fire station and walk over. It's 5-minute walk.
And that first due, as we call it, is loaded with it's a mix of occupancy. There's commercial, there's a good deal of commercial, and there's a great deal of residential, and that residential is in the form of row houses, correct?
Exactly. It's Back Bay is brownstones and row houses, and it's lovely.
And we say Back Bay, across the bay is what school?
Oh, Harvard, right. And MIT. It's Cambridge, right across the river. It's the Charles River, and so day of the fire was an extremely cold day in March. And we were icing over. It was windy. The wind was off the Charles onto Beacon Street. Beacon Street is about, I think, 3 blocks back from where it's station in Boylston. And he wasn't actually scheduled to work that day. So he stayed at the firehouse, and when Trump came in, he that was his assignment. But as he was covering somebody else, he went out on engine 33. That launch. And so there was training going on. There were a lot of guys in the training. Went to the fire, and as I understand it, row house is actually in the middle of the block. The fire was at the back of the building, and there was no water backup, no hydrants, and nothing. So the only water available to them was on the side streets or at the front of the building. So at the time, Lieutenant Walsh, he was the first officer on scene, had to go in with Michael because it was. And so they poured the ladder truck. Somebody else was working it. Michael got the hose and carried it in, and they had one fellow standing back who was supposed to put the hose on. And a person exiting the building, one of the residents told them that there may be somebody in a apartment. So he wasn't sure. So they had to go down into the basement to try and locate this person. Almost immediately, the hose must have failed. There was an explosion because there was a closet loaded with things and things that shouldn't be there.
Mhm.
But it was years of accumulated things stored in that closet, and they think that is when the hose failed because they were pumping water in, and Michael and Ed Walsh never got it. They kept calling for the water, and you can hear Lieutenant Walsh basically saying, "Hey, it's getting hot down here. We need water." Dark lights. They never got it. So the other firefighters realized they called a mayday. The other firefighters, everybody in the city responded. It was, I think, a 9 alarm at that point. And off duty, everybody responded to the fire. And they tried to go in through the back. And eventually that is how they found Michael. Unfortunately, didn't find Lieutenant Walsh. The group went in after the fire, excuse me, and found his wedding ring for his wife.
Mm-hmm.
She's a lovely person. He had 3 small children. And so fire, there were so many things that went wrong that day, from the fact that the gentlemen who started the fire were working without a permit. The city of Boston requires a permit. The work they were doing, they didn't have it.
It was some sort of welding, correct?
I'm sorry?
It was some sort of welding, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, it was welding. Yes. And apparently when they were doing the welding, sparks got under the old wood sheets, and fire was, fueled by the wind coming in off the Charles, and it went into the walls and the ceiling of the building. And by the time Michael and Ed went into the building, it was in the ceiling, but they couldn't know that.
Right.
And unfortunately, at the front of the building, there were bars on the windows, which it should have been neutered. One firefighter actually pulled his both shoulders out trying to pull those bars off the window. Tried everything. But there was another explosion when firefighters were trying to get in through the front of the building. They were blown out. They were blown right down the stairs. It was just horrendous. There were so many things wrong that day. From the bar on the window, the wind, the wind-driven fire. Unfortunately, city of Boston at that point had was not didn't see the fire department as favorable, so he didn't fund it properly, and so they had wind-driven fire. When you cut fire budgets, something suffers. Whether it's equipment, personnel, training, something always suffers. And that's what happened there. They didn't have training.
You say, because it was a mix of things that just went wrong that day, between, like you said, the wind driven, the bars on the windows, multiple things. But the hose burning through is ultimately what they determined was the major issue, correct?
That's correct. And if you read the report, It basically said there was nothing available on the market that it wouldn't have hurt. So that was shocking to me. Now, my friend is an engineer. She often works on things for outer space for Boeing and NASA. And so when I couldn't see, after Michael died, I started reading the NFPA standards for fire hose because I was shocked. How could it be in this age that fire hose would burn through that quickly that they never got water? So I asked my husband, "Could you look at this?" And he was fine. He said, "This is integrated. I don't understand why this is a standard. And it makes no sense." I've There were television commercials with a race car driver in flames, and he had a suit on that never burned.
Right.
It infuriated me. So I, I, I was, I was just beside myself. Fortunately for me, I have friends who really stood with me. We started the Last Call Foundation. But double in contra for Michael. Michael was always there at last call, and that was his last call.
Mm.
So his last call was for water, and I was determined that we were going water to firefighters when they call for it. We began doing research with the NFA, and we went to Washington to Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, where the fabulous burn facility. We worked with them to test the hose that was then current. They were horrified. So the folks running that testing basically said to me, "This," and they helped me find a company that we could hire, Last Call Foundation could hire, to do the research and see what we could come up with. And so, of course, we pushed the NFPA to change the standard and require a test, which they did. However, the manufacturers on the standard making committee made sure that they would have to report the test results to their first
Well, and
environment.
that's such the
They don't
issue.
have to tell you how long before their hose fails.
Right. That's such the issue with NFPA because we're seeing that everywhere, right? It's you have industry representatives and ownership of this industry on the boards for NFPA. And so it's not a firefighter thing. It's a money thing. And so it's going to go with where the money goes. And we'll get into some PFAS stuff later because I know you're involved in that as well. And that's such a major part of what was happening there as well. And so
it was a disgrace.
So you get them to make some changes, but there's not. It's kind of shadow changes, right? Because okay, yeah, we'll test the hose, but we're not going to tell you what we find. So is that still the case today, or has that been changed?
So at the time that they wrote the standard, my husband had just been diagnosed with limbic encephalitis. So I was missing in action. I didn't read the standard until after it had been published. I just trusted that since we had done all the work with alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, with the fire engineering that we hired, everything was done. We got it approved by UL. We assumed that they would be honorable and above board. That was a wrong assumption. They were not. I was horrified. So I wrote a TAA, and I submitted it and was going to go to Texas where the convention was held that year, the NFPA convention, and get a warning issue. However, my liaison to that committee, who was a wonderful guy, basically said to me, "Kathy, the fortunate thing is, if you succeed, what happens at this point, it goes back to what it used to be. There'll be no test at all."
Okay.
So I dropped it. Now they're going through their next round because it's all cyclical. We're trying because now we have a hose. Last call found a fabric that just essentially didn't burn. However, the lining failed and the lining distorted and ripped the hose, so it would fail.
Okay, so it
So
failed from the inside.
There needs to be nitrile or rubber or something inside to carry the water. So we were struggling with this when I got a phone call from the president at SnapTight. And he said, I know what you're doing. I've been following it, and we've been doing the same thing. And I think we have. And so we brought them down to fire engineering in Maryland, fire at risk. And we tested their hose. That day, the hose tested at 15 minutes. And minutes.
At what temperature?
And then it failed. That is 12 inches away from direct flame by a gas burner. And that's the new test for the thermal quality.
Okay.
Is 12 inches from the direct flame.
Okay.
So it failed at 13 to 15 minutes, and we thought that was wonderful. They were so infuriated they had brought the wrong hose. Was the hose, and they had one that was better than that. So we sent a group from our committee to Erie, Pennsylvania, to use SnapTight's facility, and they tested hose there. It failed at 45 minutes and 55 minutes, respectively.
Wow.
So you go from 2 to 3 minutes, which is where the current hose that most apartments use, that's when it's going to fail at 12 inches. That's 45 to 59. Now I have a piece that I carry with me that has never failed. They finally stopped the test. I think they stopped it at 59 minutes. It never failed. So this hose is what should be the only hose brought into an actual burning building. You know, outside's in one thing, but what you bring into the fire should be able to withstand longer. And my goal was always, I wanted it to last longer than your tank.
Right.
And I wanted to be sure that in the event a firefighter had to use it to get out of a building, I could get on my head. So I'm thrilled, and I was ready to retire from it. I was like, okay, let's tell everybody it exists. It's more expensive. That's is starting an initiative where we will match funds for any apartment that is underfunded. Obviously, if you can afford to buy it, it's $700 for a couple length. It's and that's about 3 times what your current hose is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can afford it, go out and buy it. If you can't afford it, you can apply for a grant to us, and we will work with you to get it. Now we're trying to have a well. I was on a call about a month and a half ago where it's going through the UL. We're trying to get UL to rate. So if it's rated, that would be only one that's currently available to go into a building. Other factories really should be working on it. They really dropped the ball on this. Why not? Because when a hose fails, they get to sell you more, right? So what do they get?
Yeah, and I was going to ask that. Has anyone else caught up to this hose yet?
No.
And that's
Nothing
just
I'm aware of.
and that's just a matter of they don't think it's feasible to sell it, or they just want to make sure they get repeat sales.
I think it's a combination. It's really lame excuses is what it amounts to. Uh, in this day and age, it just shouldn't be happening. This is a safety tool. This is the most important ingredient in the fire. It's the water.
Right.
It should not be happening. So I was on the call with UL. I got into a little bit of a tiff with a manufacturer from Florida. If UL has this, I've been told that NFPA will pick it up. However, NFPA is trying to delay it for this cycle. And so I've asked to be included on their next call. But I want to make sure that the firefighters that are on that committee understand you don't create these guys. And if you let them know you're voting against them and it will cause issues much faster.
Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount, and I appreciate all of you. I have one request, though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show. So that's where you're at with the fire hose right now.
Yes.
I want to go back because I want to pick your brain a little bit. I want to hear your story a little bit after Michael dies.
Oh, good.
I know. We talked about it before we started, and I just kind of want to get the feeling. I want to hear how you moved forward.
Well, for me, as I told you, my father died when I was a child. My husband died when I was in my 30s. So Michael's death was just like in my face. And I knew that if I reacted the way I had previously, I would be in bed for probably the rest of my life. But my husband and I had adopted 3 children. They were my niece's children, and they were at home living with us, and they needed me. And when Michael came home from the Marines and he was discharged, and we would talk and whatever, and we were talking about the worst things that happened, and I thought, well, would say the war, and he's no. The worst thing that ever happened in my life was when Rick died, his husband. And I said, yeah, that makes perfect sense. You were 12. He said, no, Mom, it wasn't Rick's death. It was what happened to you when Rick died. Because I was so depressed when my husband died. I was just in shock. And it took me a solid 3 years to recover from that. So I realized that was like, Michael, don't do that again. So when I have such a strong support from my friends and my extended family that founded Last Call Foundation, and to me, Last Call Foundation represents Michael. So I poured all my energies into doing what I could. We city of Boston extractors. We educated firefighters on the products of combustion that are on your needs. We moved them immediately, and we got involved in research. And that's how we got. Ian Potter and I were connected through research. She asked for funding for research, and at that time, the then Commissioner Joe Finn had told me how prevalent cancer in the fire was and how it had grown while he was in the fire. And so we were doing a lot of support for cancer education. And when Diane approached me, I vetted her, and she was, but she was this really sweet woman who came. And when I tell you, she impressed me so much. She had so much knowledge about PFAS, which I had never heard of, and all of the maladies that were associated with it. the problems with problems with hormones. It's everything that PFAS did. You drew a direct line from that. What was going on in the fire? I checked it and I was like, oh my God, she might be onto something. And when I asked my go-to guy in the fire service, they basically said, no, that's not possible. She's full of baloney. Diane can be a bit brash.
Well, I was going to say,
So,
we'll go back to tenacity. I mean, Diane is tenacity personified.
oh yeah. So when she put it out there on social media and people were basically boo-hooing her and no, that's not so.
I would use the word crucifying. I think,
Yeah.
crucifying her at the time.
They wouldn't.
Yeah.
And when I asked them why are you doing this? Because they weren't doing it to me. Like, why are you doing this? I'm saying the same thing. And they basically said that, well, first of all, they were afraid of Michael's friends. Michael was also in a motorcycle garage. I don't think anybody was going to say anything about me. So they might come knocking at their door. But the fact that firefighters need to have faith in their gear. I had already taken away all their faith in the fire hose. And Diane was taking away all their faith in their gear. And it's important for firefighters to feel like they have the latest and greatest tools. And so that's what a fellow explained it. You can't just go around saying these things. And so I said, well, we're proving it. She has really essentially proven it. It took a very long time. I think it was Bobby Halston who finally was that thing that cracked in the fire service that let Dr. Peasley from Notre Dame come and give his first lecture. And he was attacked. I was there. He was really attacked by several people in the audience. But he stood up to it. This man, he did this out of the goodness of his heart. They didn't charge for any of their work. Last Call funded the independent confirmation, what grade was. And he had explained to that was doing the confirmation out in California. He had explained to them how this came out, and it was firefighter safety. We were expecting somewhere between $12,000 and $20,000. And I just found this out in the last year. It ended up only costing us less than $4,000. We were charged for the confirmation. So that would have took cost of one set of gear to prove that PFAS is all over your gear. It is insanely applied to that gear. And when you open that pack, first time you touch it, that's when it's most dangerous. Not that dangerous after you've been to a fire. You need to separate that gear, wear a mask, wear gloves, separate it, wash each layer separately. If I were you, I would wash it 2 or 3 times, get as much of that PFAS off at the end.
That's what's kind of ironic about this. Diane introduced me to you, and she kind of gave us the introduction email so I could get in touch with you. And I've recorded Diane, and we talked about it at length, and I didn't realize that. I'm learning that right now from you, that it's the most dangerous opening that package, because I understood it's when it starts to break down.
No. Well, breakdown products are horrible as well.
Right.
Yes. But the chemicals that are present when you receive it, that are covering that gear, that's the most that there's ever going to be. And
it makes total sense. I just didn't realize. I don't know why I didn't put the two together and go, well, that's probably the worst.
Well, so let me tell you something else. After Dr. Peasley stopped the research and said, okay, we can't go any further. We have to tell firefighters. And he began talking about it, but I think it was a university that required him to have confirmation other than the lab. And so he suggested a follow-on study, which last called funded. We gave $50,000 to the University of Alabama, Dr. Susan Bappy. And she did a dermal study. Um, and the results of that study were horrifying. What is absorbed through a firefighter's skin in a superheated environment is like 400 times what it is when you're walking around wearing it. The, the fact that you don't all have cancer is amazing. It's outrageous that the NFPA is allowing this to continue.
And I think this is becoming more and more known is that this battle or this issue with NFPA, everyone used to say, well, it's NFPA, it's NFPA. Well, NFPA isn't representing our best interests, and it haven't been for a while. And it's coming to light now, and it's coming more to light, I suppose. And you're seeing more and more of a backlash on NFPA. So it's interesting to see where that committee goes once that light starts being shined on it.
Well, Ed, who is a Boston firefighter and knew my son, he's now president of the IAFF, and filed a lawsuit against the NFPA here in Boston. And it's good that it's in Massachusetts because Massachusetts has a triple damages. So I am so glad he did it here. I hope they go to trial. I hope these idiots, these manufacturers, try to defend themselves as it's indefensible. And I just don't understand how anybody could be so greedy that they would knowingly poison people who are, I mean, everybody's heroes. You guys just things that you do to protect everybody else. And these greedy bastards are poisoning you. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, I think it boggles all of our minds. Thankfully, that people like you and Diane are bringing it to light, and we as firefighters are learning it from you guys. And so it's the thanks that we owe both of you and other people out there is immense.
Well, the movie Burned, that Rascal funded that because we realized the disinformation that was contradicting everything trying to tell firefighters. That disinformation was being taken seriously by the fire service. And it's astounding that anybody could call themselves a scientist and actually put this crap out. But firefighters don't know. Fighters, what do you know? So we decided to do the movie because that's something you can all relate to.
Yeah, and the movies. Again back to Diane. I interviewed Diane after watching the movie, and that movie and her work are I don't know how any firefighter in the country can't pay attention to it right now.
Yeah. And yet there are a lot of them that do not, haven't heard or still don't believe because, the previous president of the IAFF was supporting the manufacturers. Mind-boggling, but
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get into the why he was supporting them and the speculation there. It's definitely, there was some, we'll just use the word shady. We'll leave it at that. So you funded the movie.
mm-hmm.
And so that means you worked directly with Ethereal Films and in that whole crew. So where is that movie at now? Is it released for everyone to see? Because I know when I did my episode with it, it was still, you had to have a link to it and you had to share, you had to get permission to view it. And so is it widely available now?
So you can go to lastcallfoundation.org and it's our website. You will find a link there that talks about the movie. You click on that link and it will take you to Ethereal Films. They will know that you came from our website. And all you need to do is let them know you're in the fire service. If you're in the fire service, they will confirm, they will release,
A-
and it's free.
And I can vouch
So
for that because that's how I first watched the movie. I applied through it and directly with contact with Elijah and they helped me get to the movie and then we had our interview together. So yeah, I think that movie is just too important not to watch. I've shared it with my crew at work. I've shared it with other crews in my department, and it's just you have to watch it.
Well, I, I, I think the fact that Paul Cotter got cancer, and now every firefighter in the world knows what's on their gear. Every firefighter in the world needs to begin to fight together to get that crap off your gear. There's no excuse for it. And from the IAAF did their own research to confirm what we had done, and they came back with this stuff isn't even necessary. It wasn't necessary when they applied it. And oh, by the way, it's the most expensive component of gear.
Hmm. See, now you're back to teaching me something because even with that interview, I didn't know that part either.
It's disgusting. It's really disgusting. I just, why is it that the fire service is treated so badly? You're underfunded to be anywhere. That's your biggest problem. I mean, from everything, all the research that we've done, for instance, Last Call Foundation is funding some research at Tufts University. The professor used to work with digital. She done things for the military, so on and so forth. Here's the problem. Creating a pair of glasses that would adapt to your helmet, that you could use it in a fire where everything is pitch black. It totally clears the room. You could see everything, every detail in that room, despite the black smoke. Okay. Normally you wouldn't see your hand in front of your face. These glasses will allow you. All we need to do is to make them heat resistant. But there is no money in the fire service to buy these. If there's no money in the fire service to do the research, they're using other applications. There is so much technology in other applications that could be applied to the fire service. Nobody's doing the research to apply them. They do the transfer because there's no money in the fire service. You guys are so grossly underfunded, and everybody knows it.
Yeah, and that goes back to, I mean, it is about dollars and cents, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Let me tell you the story. So at one of the Central Committee meetings for Firehose, the I guess he was the I'm not sure what his position was, but he was high up in the NFPA. And we broke down into these little working groups, and I was in his group. When thing he said above firehose. All right. The most important thing we consider in dollars and cents is the death of 2 firefighters worth our doing research and changing and retooling, and does it make sense? I was going to go over the table with the guy. Well, right. And he's saying this right in front of me.
Right.
It was mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But that's their training.
Yeah, that they're trained to the bottom line for their company. Right.
I think it was disgusting. They're supposed to be for safety for the fire service, right? That's not what they're considering. And you should all know that. And you should all start pushing back on everything. Don't trust what they tell you. Push back to it.
And that's where I was going to ask. What avenues do these guys, myself included, boots on the ground, so to speak, have to kind of fight back?
Well, they need firefighters on these committees. So it's supposed, the makeup of the committee, it's supposed to be one third manufacturer, one third scientists, and one third firefighters, the end users, right? The way they have it set up, the manufacturers are covered, um, but all their expenses are paid by their companies. And excuse me, Sarah was to so the the manufacturers will um, cover all expenses to travel anywhere in the country.
Mhm.
And the scientists, most of the scientists, believe it or not, are getting their funding from the manufacturer. So there are very few independent scientists. And then you have the firefighters who come on and they're always on a learning curve unless they have years and years of experience in something. They're always on a learning curve. They're listening, and from what they tell me, they're being drowned out every time they try to contribute something that they feel is important. They're being drowned out. And they end up acquiescing. And sooner or later, a lot of them, at least in the fire hose, which is where I was here in the beginning, um, went to work for the manufacturers when they retired from the fire service.
Well, I think it goes to it speaks to what you said before. The fire departments are underfunded, and so if the manufacturers can throw money at these guys, why wouldn't they take it?
Exactly. And they believed them, by the way. They did believe them. They
Mhm.
really did until we proved it. They really believed it. And that's where we have to really change the mindset of the firefighters. Have to find your brightest and best, send them to these committees and make them stand together and do the research on their own, independent of those committees. Don't take the folks on those committees are saying is gospel because it's not always true.
So before we get too far into it, well, we're already getting into it. What are so the fire hoses was a focus. That's how you start with that focus. Burned as a focus, and
Mhm.
PFAS. And let's talk a little bit detect together and what that
Oh,
is.
yeah. The together is a they started out as the 1540 connection. Okay. Um, this family started it because between the ages of 15 and 40, when you, the last thing they look at is cancer. They and so they often missed diagnosis of cancers between 15 and 40. Um, but they changed it to the Tech Together about a year and a half ago. And approached Last Call Foundation for funding on the recommendation of Dr. Mike Hamrock. Um, and they told us what they were doing for cancer detection and how to teach people what to watch for. And so now finding out, they found out, of course, that cancer is endemic in the fire service, and you are the biggest cohort growing of cancer patients. And so they asked if they could work with us, and we funded them the first year, I think it was years ago. And we funded them all over the Commonwealth. They put together a special program for firefighters. And um, it tells you exactly what you should be looking for. And there may be other things that they miss. I don't know. But when I saw that program, I was so impressed. I asked a firefighter, a young fellow here in Boston. His name is Dan Ranny. He was in his early 30s, but he was started. I asked him, would this have made a difference to you? And he went and saw it, and now he's involved. And he started a foundation to help other firefighters and are diagnosed with cancer. But when I tell you, they hit every fruits that you need. They teach you what to watch for, how long you should let something go, which is usually about 2 years. If you don't trust what the doctor is saying to you, or if your insurance isn't covering something, they teach you how to deal with all of it, how to navigate the medical community. It's a wonderful program and everybody should be seeing it.
And you're going to have to forgive me for a second because I know I saw something on the website, and I looked again yesterday and I couldn't find it on the website. There was a bit about PTSD through your foundation. And so what are you doing with PTSD?
So PTSD, of course, because I know that Michael had it, and I know that um, firefighters in general, you're all, you know, tend to look the other way when it's yourself, but not for your body. And the the importance of support, peer support in the fire service can't be stressed enough. You need to be able to obviously trust one another in mental health as much as you do in every day in your jobs. And if somebody comes to you and says, I noticed the difference, you're not your usual self and it's gone on for however long. And, our peer support group, or there is this, or there is that. Or if you know that somebody is drinking too much or even involved in drugs, whatever it is, we have started going to facilities because, of course, you don't want the command to know. You want this to be private. Most people don't want you to do insurance. We have funded guys going help when they reach out to us, but you have to reach out. We don't know.
I think the most alarming thing that you and I don't know how long it's been since we talked on the phone that first time. The most alarming thing that you mentioned to me was how it has to be so secretive in Massachusetts, or at least in your area, your part of Massachusetts, that nobody wants their chain of command to know what they're going through because they're afraid of, I don't know if retribution is the word, or what would come from it. And is that still the case? And how is that allowed to be the case?
Well, um, so from a command viewpoint, okay, so I've seen it from both sides. From a command viewpoint, somebody is drinking too much or doing drugs or is seriously depressed. Do you really want him being the support for this other guy? What if he has a hangover? What if so that's the way they do. From the rank and file, basically are watching out for one another and for a whole different reason, because they're brothers and because they support one another. And we don't want the command to uncover what's going on with their brother. They would rather cover your shifts for a month and let you go someplace and detox and come back slowly to work. And they will support one another through it.
So is it still the case in your area that if someone says, "Hey, I'm really suffering here. You're not going to self-diagnose with PTSD, but we know you know when something's going on," and you say, you basically raise your hand and said, "I need help. I need to go see somebody. I need to go away. I need 30 days of inpatient." Is it still the case that they face something when they come back from that?
Well, they're going to be monitored. You better believe it. If the command is aware that there is an issue, they will monitor people. Sometimes they'll put them pushing a broom at headquarters.
Yeah, I was gonna say that about my own, not my situation, but my own area is they're not really fully equipped with how to deal with somebody when they come back from this.
Mhm.
So they go and they Center of Excellence is a great reference. You go to the Center of Excellence, you do a 30, 40-day stint at the Center of Excellence, you come back, the Center of Excellence writes this aftercare plan for you, and it's your responsibility to adhere to this plan to keep yourself safe and stable. But your department doesn't really know. It's so new still. The departments don't know how to reintegrate somebody after they've had this care. And I know that there's been a number of people from my own department have been to Center of Excellence, and they've spoken to me about that reentry. And that reentry is very weird. It to be the it's maybe the better word is nebulous.
Yeah. It is, I doesn't surprise me. It's a problem, and they're going to have to figure out how to deal with that problem. But I don't think, um, I don't think it's as bad as it was, say, 3 years ago. I think the fact that, people are doing everything now to get the help that they need, um, and the departments are trying to respect that. Um, but you have to understand their liability issues as well.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. There are definitely liability issues. Yeah. Because, I mean, you're putting your face out there to the public, and you're assisting people at those moments. And if something goes wrong, obviously there is a liability issue. So what's the future for Last Call? What things are you headed towards?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, to tell you the truth. My issue right now is we fulfilled our original goal. We have helped in others as well. Uh, Cancer, education. We fund unfunded um, departments for things that they absolutely need. We targeted the greater Boston area with um, an apparatus for the Boston Sparks Association. And they respond. And, I mean, I think those volunteers are so underappreciated. They give you guys everything you need. In the winter, they provide warmth. In the summer, they provide cooling stations. They, I mean, it's wonderful. And I think it makes a difference in your health. So I want to continue funding them. I want to continue providing matching funds for departments who need it for the firehose, to get the decent firehose. And I also think we have to be open to other emergency situations. I'm not sure what research may be involved in it, because I find that means so slowly. And it should be a pass-through charity, this 501c3. And because of the way research works, we ought to have to put funds aside to continue the funding 2 and 3 and 4 years down the line. And because it worked for us, it dropped our rating.
Gotcha.
So we need to provide funding for things immediately. So I think that's the way we would run going forward. We hired Jason Burns to be the executive director, and I have stepped back a little bit, but a little bit from the day work. And he was a firefighter from Fall River, Massachusetts. He's very knowledgeable. He's worked with the union. Actually, he was president of his local for a while. So I'm hoping that over time, between he and Sarah is was Michael's girlfriend, and she is captain of our Boston Marathon running team. And actually, she's raised more money to firefighters than anybody. Done a wonderful job. I think he raised more than $500,000 in the 9 years since Michael's death.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. And I think I'm hoping that it will continue that way, but if it can't, um, I think that what we would do is continue our marathon fundraising for as long as we can, and support cancer efforts, and as many ways as we can discover to mitigate cancer. So,
So what about you personally? What do you want to do in the future?
well, I had my granddaughter yesterday. She's um, rained over the night before, and I let 10 out. Um, so I love spending time with my grandchildren. And my husband is on mend. He had lung cancer over the winter. He's had a rough few years.
Okay.
So our hoping to be able to travel, but I don't think I'll ever totally let go of last call or the Boston Fire Department. I I think to me, all of the guys represent Michael.
And I think that was going to be another question of mine. What do you want his lasting legacy to be? What do you want Michael's lasting legacy to be?
Well, there is a priest here in Boston who's amazing. The girls call him Father Whataway. He's very handsome German name. But I spoke to him recently and it popped into my head that Michael and Ed did not die in vain because of Michael. You guys now have a fire hose that is so much safe to bring into a building and have the knowledge which may have just gone down the drain with Diane Cotter. The knowledge that there are ways to mitigate your carcinogen exposures. So, and you have the knowledge that the NFPA is not your friend.
No. So I'm going to wrap up with you for the last two questions I ask everybody. And the first one is, I, I'll explain a little bit about the title of the show, because I know you're busy and I don't expect everybody to listen to my show. I called it the things we all carry because it's based off of a book, and the book was called The Things They Carried, and it was a Vietnam novel, and it was about a platoon, and it would describe what they carry into battle, but it would also describe the scars and wounds they carry out of battle. Obviously, metaphors for the psychological wounds as well. And so I loosely based it off of that. And I like to ask everybody of a everyday carry, something that you have on you every day that if you left home without, you kind of feel naked.
Um, well, so whenever I am dealing with anything having to do with Michael, I either have this necklace on or Michael's dog tags.
And what's the necklace?
This necklace was given to me by a jeweler in Boston whose mother died the same day that Michael did. She made it. It's the red, white, and blue stones, the diamond, ruby, and sapphire. It's a Maltese cross with Boston fire in it, and so it's just it's part of Boston Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael dog tags, Michael gave me the first medal that he ever received. And he put it with his dog tag. And I wore that medal he got was for bringing troops to chapel. He led the troops to chapel during his training at boot camp.
Okay.
And so all the other medals, and I have citations and flags and medals and all of them. And to be very honest, when I first got those medals, and I know how important they are to all you guys, they made me angry because I did not want a medal. I wanted my son.
Mm.
And so I actually broke a couple boxes tossing them. But I now I understand what the EP guys, but they're not medals you guys want to wear.
No, they're not metal. And it's funny, you say you understand that we like the medals. A lot of us, a lot of firefighters, and not just say firefighters, they tend to shy away from that stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, I think They respect them. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they respect them, but it's most people you'll hear and they'll say it every time. Well, that's just doing my job.
Yeah. Yeah,
Even these
exactly.
people that to facilitate the most amazing rescue ever would tell you I was just doing my job.
Exactly.
And so, yeah. And I can definitely understand why you would say those medals, they represent something he did, but that doesn't represent him necessarily. What about a book? Have you read a book lately or a book that stands out to you from the past that you would like to suggest for the audience?
Exposure.
Exposure.
This is written by Rob Ballot.
Yep, the lawyer and that you featured in Burned.
Yes. If you want to understand what's happening to you guys, read that book.
Okay.
Absolutely astounding what these corporations are getting away with in this country.
Yeah, I think that it's the story, I haven't read the book, but the story and everything that I've studied about it is so disturbing. It's alarming to say the least.
Yeah. It's how, if corporations are citizens, like the ones in jail.
Yeah.
The whole company should be in jail. Just build bars around it.
Right.
It's great.
Well, we've spent about an hour and a half talking, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, there were some emotional times, but what you guys are doing is amazing. And from one firefighter sitting here in Virginia, just a huge thanks.
You're welcome, and thank you guys for your service. I truly believe that every firefighter, hero, every day that you put that uniform on, God bless you.
So I think with that, I'll let you go enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
Take care, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Much thanks.
We're out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.